Hi there, my name is Chris Sommers, and I am a pastor here at Wayfinder San Marcos. So we're going to be doing a quick journey today through the intro of the book of Genesis. And we're going to be talking about sin, idolatry, and fig leaves. So I'll be starting by reading within Genesis chapter 3. So this is after Adam and Eve come onto the scene, and all of a sudden there is this serpent that is speaking to them. And it says, "Did God really say, 'You must not eat from any tree within the garden?' The woman said to the serpent, 'We may eat from fruit of the trees in the garden. But God did say, you must not eat from the tree in the middle of the garden. You must not even touch it, or you will die.' The serpent says, 'You will certainly not die. For God knows that your eyes will be open, and you will become like God, seeing both good and evil.' So the woman saw that it was pleasing to the eye and good to eat, and so she took some and ate it, and also gave some to her husband, who ate it. Then the eyes of both of them were opened, and they realized that they were naked. So they sewed fig leaves together, making clothing for themselves, and covered themselves. Then the man and his wife heard the sound of the Lord God walking within the garden. And it was the cool of the day. And they hid from God, hiding among the trees within the garden. But God called to them and said, 'Where are you?' And the man answered, 'I heard you in the garden, and I was afraid, because I was naked.' And God said, 'Who told you that you were naked? Have you eaten from the tree that I commanded you not to eat from?' The man said, 'The woman that you gave me this fruit, and I ate it.' Then the Lord God said to them, 'What is this thing that you have done?'" So we find this very interesting passage where all of a sudden there's this talking serpent that is telling these people what God did or didn't say. And then all of a sudden we see these people giving in to this thing that looked good to themselves, giving in to this idolatry. And then we see them beginning to make out of fig leaves a clothing for themselves in order to cover up these sinful, idolatrous actions that they've done. And so I have with me today this little fig leaf right here. So this is a fairly small one. They do get much bigger than this. But one of the first things that you will realize when you begin to touch a fig leaf is that it's not a waxy covering like most leaves are. This is actually more like sandpaper. There's almost like a fine dust that's on it as well, that the more you begin to touch it and interact or pick fig leaves, you begin to get itchy very quickly. And so we see here with this fig leaf that these people were trying to cover up their actions with something else. They were trying to cover up their actions and fix things under their own power. But one of the things that we miss out by just glancing over these pages is we forget that these were people and that these were real life situations. And one of the things that we begin to realize is that this thing that they were covering themselves with was a very poor solution. And so when we read the story and the words on these pages, we have to ask ourselves and we have to put ourselves into this situation and say, what are the fruits that I'm giving into? This story begs the question, what are my own fig leaves that I am trying to use to cover up my own idolatry, my own sin, my own actions that I begin to regret? How am I trying to cover these things up? And what is the sandpaper like? What is the sandpapery, itchy thing that I am using to just make matters worse for myself, instead of coming before the throne of God and asking for forgiveness? And one of the things that we begin to see throughout this passage as it continues to go on is that God sees these fig leaf coverings, these itchy, these broken solutions to their broken problems, and God responds in grace. God responds and gives them real clothing, clothing that's not going to be like sandpaper, clothing that's not going to be itchy. God comes along and says, I'm going to help give you a graceful solution to the problems and the idolatries that you've created for yourselves. So here's my question for you, wayfinders. What are your fig leaves? And what are the idolatries that you are trying to cover up? What are the problems that you're creating for yourselves through fig leaves? What are the problems that you're trying to cover up for yourselves? What are the fruits that you've eaten? How are you hiding from God today? So I ask those questions. But I also want to put in this for you as well. Is God responds in grace, and God responds in love. In the moments where we try to fix things ourselves, God comes along just pages later and says, how can I help? How can I give you the grace that you need to continue on in your walk and journey in life? Here's a new set of clothing. Here's a new set of clothing that's far better. Here's a new set of clothing that is far better than the fig leaves that you've sewn together. Here's a much better solution to those problems that you've created for yourselves. So I hope this quick sermon, this quick journey through Genesis has been helpful for you. And I hope you ponder those questions of what are your fig leaves? What are the fruits or your idolatries? And how can God respond in grace for you today? So go in peace.